Do we really have to love ourselves? Many of us have the fantasy of someone else showing up and giving us all the love that we need. And what actually happens is someone shows up and they have the same lack of self-love we do. Okay. Most people think they love themselves until we do something like punch the vending machine or freeze in a meeting and forget to say what we were supposed to say. Those are just weird one offs, and we kind of reject those. We sweep them under the rug. So the ego can go on believing we love ourselves and just reject anything that isn't love. Buddhist nun Mary Reed explains that when we add the pain of self rejection to the pain of the negative experience, we simply compound it. I have here an infographic, but how? How do we fix this? What do we do? Okay, Mary Reed suggests that the path to self love is self acceptance. It's easy to look at this graphic and think she's saying love sparkles on everything. Not really. I'm an SRA survivor. So what happened was I started here in love and I got put around all the way out into the deep blue night. So around depression. So the process of self acceptance is about accepting that depression and then moving into the shock of what happened and then clinging to some hope, maybe finding some passion. So each of these streams is a different chapter in your life. That's what these are. And the reason I love this process, and when I heard Mary Reed say this, it really hit home, is because this process of self acceptance does not require you to love everything that's going on in your life. So, for the purposes of this video, I would say that the process I'm going to discuss is going to improve your intimate relationships. It's less about your manifesting your dreams, your career relationships. You do teach people how to treat you, and the way you teach them is by demonstrating the way you treat yourself. So, when you love yourself conditionally, you teach them to love you conditionally too. To be clear, this is not a moral judgment. This is not about good and evil. It really is energetic. What happens is you teach each other, hey, just look at the surface of me and don't dig too deep, okay? So that's the tacit agreement. And you'll keep ending up with people who are comfortable there. Either you get sorted away from healthy people or you end up missing red flags because that's where you are. That's how you treat yourself. What that means is we are unknowingly demonstrating accepting some parts of ourselves and rejecting others. So, this process I'm going to review in this video is pretty difficult for the ego because what the ego had going on was sorting and sifting good things and bad things. So, anything that's love, that's us, that's who we are. Anything that's not love, whoops, that's just shoved under the rug, right? The ego was happily going along surviving that way. And it's only an issue when people show up doing the same thing to us. So they're like, we love you when you're making us money. We don't love you when you're talking about feelings. So it's like, we love you when you're working Saturday, Sunday. We don't love you when you're advocating for your needs, right? So what happens is other people just treat you that way. And you have no idea. You have no idea this is going on. So let's fix it. Over the course of the video, I will go over a process that I did for 30 days. Now, I was going to do a meditation for this self-acceptance meditation, but I think it requires a really in-depth project, basically, if you want to call it that. So if you want to take this on, I think it can get pretty difficult. So if you go ahead and do this process for 30 days, um, I will give you a disclaimer. Mary Reed likens this process to removing barbed wire from flesh. Okay, so all these rejected parts, they they hurt coming out. Okay, so if it were me, I would never remove barbed wire quickly or casually. I would use all the tools I had in my arsenal. And most important, if it's not going well, I would call a professional. Okay, so you are in charge of your own healing. I don't like messaging that says that, you need to call a hotline or something and everyone panics. You are in charge of your psyche. I don't want to give the impression that you need to be giving your power away ever, ever, ever. However, if you determine this barbed wire is a mess, I need help, that is so valid. It's very valid, right? Cool. So, so how do we do that? How do we accept all these pieces of ourselves that we so clearly rejected? Great question. What happens is those pieces of yourself were rejected for a reason. Your ego cannot tolerate them. So the reason self-acceptance works is step one, you don't have to love these things. The process of self-love is not a process of saying, hello, weakness, I love that you're here. Hello, PTSD, I love you. That's not what we're doing. You don't love these parts of yourself. That's why you rejected them, remember? So self-acceptance says you're allowed. You're allowed to have buried parts of yourself. You're allowed not to like them, let alone love them. So first step in the 30-day process, you're going to set aside the meditation time to really work with your body. And speaking of your body, a great way to pull up some kind of feeling about yourself is to ask, how do I feel about my body? Wait, if you're triggered, please do skip this video. You can please click on. I only bring up the body because it's so common. Even if you're incredibly, if you're some kind of supermodel, people still have these strong feelings about something their body ought to be doing, something it's not doing, a way it looks, a way it feels. So the only reason to ask, how do I feel about my body? Your body is yourself. The way you talk to it, about it, the way you feel about it is the way you feel about yourself. So if that's not too triggering, it's an easy place to start because it's concrete. As you start the exercise, if you want to deal with the body, like how do you feel about your body? Let's say you're shocked that you don't like your body. So often when we start this exercise, the first emotion is shock. It's like, I cannot believe all this negativity was here. So what you would do is you would use shock. This is why it's 30 days. So you start with just the emotion of shock. So the way it works is you're going to visualize a cottage. So in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the monster is like wandering outside of this beautiful cottage for a portion of the novel. So there's this like lovely, cute family inside the cottage, and they're adorable. And the monster feels like wretched. The monster's like, oh, I don't deserve to be inside. So the monster's sort of lingering and lurking outside. So the monster is this emotion. So shock is the monster. Okay. So the monster is just wandering around. It's in exile. It's not allowed to do anything or be a part of the family. It's just sad and lonely out there, but it still exists. So the process is you're inside the cottage by the fire. What happens is you invite the monster to come and sit a while. It's just going to sit by the fire. So the most important thing is that if a total stranger walked into your home, you wouldn't exclaim, I love you. That's not correct, right? So the monster just gets to come inside. You just accept that the monster's here now. You don't scream that you love it. You don't hug it and kiss it. That's ridiculous. You just let it sit down. Okay, so now the monster is here, and take as long as you want studying the monster, sitting with the monster. The monster is a monster. Okay, we don't have to pretend the monster is a teddy bear. So it's just going to sit there and it's just going to be by the fire. Um, Whenever you're ready, the next step of this process is to ask the monster, what is your goal? You're obviously still here, still lurking around, still kind of observing us in the cottage, still looking in on us. The monster has a point of view. So then we ask the monster, what is your goal? What do you want from us? And then you listen to that goal. Often I find that exiled parts have some kind of goal of empowering us in a misguided way. Like if they're violent or if they're crazy, um, the goal often involves like stand up for yourself, empower yourself in some way, or protect yourself. It's often a misguided attempt at these things, but it could be something else. So again, I'm just using common examples, but feel free to listen to the unique message because it's key. So what's happening is when the monster expresses its desperate yell for you to do something differently, it's like a child or an animal who needs help. So you've invited the monster into the cottage, but you're the owner of the cottage. So you're in control. So your job now is to say, thank you, monster. I invited you in because you did, and I am going to accomplish your goal in a more rational way. So I am going to empower myself. I'm going to have to thread a needle. I'm going to have to navigate that empowerment in a different way. So the owner of the cottage doesn't really use the strategy of the monster, but they do listen to the need. So the owner says, I will meet that need. I'm going to do it a different way, and I'm going to use really cool tools. Like, let's say it's self-protection, that's a common one. So the owner of the cottage can say, thank you, monster. Thanks for warning me. I'm still going to deal with that problem, but I have really cool tools. I have all kinds of tools at my disposal. And then you might feel the monster sort of relax and chill out a bit. So this meeting was incredibly productive. So what happens as you integrate the messages of your particular monster and your rational mind can bring the need online and start empowering yourself, you're going to start making changes in your life. So back to you teaching people how to treat you. So what happens is when the teacher teaches a new lesson, some of the students get mad. Some of the students may drop out of the class. So if you start making these changes, there are growing pains. Um, what eventually has to happen is they have to love themselves too, or you basically are out of step with each other. Normally, it's the latter, not the former. Normally, you end up being out of step with a lot of your dysfunctional relationships. This can be difficult, and I'm warning you ahead of time. This can be part of your cottage owner's rational plan. So you are going to offend people who are still dysfunctional and still broken. They liked you being dysfunctional and broken with them. If you start to heal, they don't like it. And you are out of sync and out of step. So that's a new job for the cottage owner to deal with. So part of what the monster was saying is, I'm in pain, I need help, and I need things to be different. The rational mind then has to make them different and deal with consequences. So you will have to deal with people not liking the new you. And that's always how change works. You're basically reintegrating this pain and this issue into the ego. So again, this is a long process, and you would do this with every single emotion on the chart. I know. So depending on, I was an SRA survivor, so I climbed all the way back. But I want to be clear that as you climb back, it isn't immediate joy and delight. You have to move into a new chapter each time. So implement as you implement this new strategy, it can be very difficult because belonging is a need, like oxygen. Belonging in adverse conditions meant cutting off parts of yourself that didn't fit the culture. That could be a dysfunctional family, community, etc., cult, anything. So now that we're bringing those parts back online after so long in exile, you don't belong to that dysfunctional group anymore. Instead, now you belong to yourself. Let me know how it goes.